Hello everyone and welcome back to another Minecraft update video. We are here on Minecraft.net because 1.14.2 has been released and it says that this release addresses a few issues left over from 1.14.1. They wanted to release these fixes as soon as possible as they had a big impact to gameplay. But we do also have a bunch of less critical bug fixes releasing soon in an upcoming 1.14.3. So the nastiest stuff gets taken care of in this little update, and then in the next one there'll be even more bug fixes. The first thing it says in the changelog here is that all lights will now be recalculated the first time you open a world saved in a previous version. Now my experience of this feature has not been good. I've seen it through Hermitcraft, I've loaded a few worlds with this feature, and there are two big things that I noticed, but let me explain first of all what it's doing. We have this optimized world feature right here, and I believe it is optimizing the world and erasing the cache data, which means it goes over the whole lighting of that world again. So the two things that I've experienced is, one, when you first load it, this loading screen is going to be really slow. It's going to take quite some time. The other issue is then chunk loading. You might be able to tell it's a little bit on the slow side as I fly around here, and that's because I believe every time you load a chunk that hasn't been loaded in this version, it recalculates the light unless you've done the optimized world thing beforehand. And so I experienced this on Hermitcraft, I can experience it in single player, you might experience it as well, but chunk loading seems to be slower. Now if I turn around and fly back the way we just came, it should be a little bit quicker, as you can see, and that's because it's already relighted the majority of these ones because I just flew over here. So I tested this at length on the Hermitcraft server, and I could be incorrect, these are just my observations, but if they are correct, the problem that I think we're going to face is that you could play in a world for a long time, and then if you traveled to an area that you hadn't visited in a long time, all of a sudden the game could get slow again. Especially on servers, it feels like such a bad idea, because when I was loading the chunks for the first time, it would be negatively impacting the server performance. Another word of caution with this update. In 1.14 we had Vanishing Entities. Now one of the most common ways you'd see this in your world is through armor stands and item frames, because they are frequently used to decorate bases and places that you commonly visit. So loads of people have experienced this. We had it on Hermitcraft. You just log back in one day and these things would have disappeared. Now is this still an issue? It seems like it's not the case. For the most part, this problem has really been taken care of. However, there is still one or two things going missing here and there on Hermitcraft. We're not sure if they'd gone missing in the past or since we had updated, but I've also had players commenting on this as well, that the entities still vanish, although it's not as prevalent as before. But the message, as always, is to use the backup feature and make backups of your world before you update. Now there is also a bug that we've been experiencing on Hermitcraft in pre-release 4. I see no mention of it in the changelog, so I think this is still in the game. You can go through a portal, and when you come out the other side you will be stuck inside of the portal, unable to move. You'll be able to look around, but you can't physically move. You'll just be locked to that location. And one of the ways you can get out of that is by having an ender pearl. So if you are playing, keep ender pearls on your hotbar, and if you get stuck in a portal, you'll be able to pearl out. So before we get into some of the feature changes and bug fix at length, let's just talk about three things in the changelog here that I couldn't make heads or tails of. We have added server-side chunk count to the debug screen. Well, here is 1.14.1 connected to a server and 1.14.2 also connected to a server, and yet they both have the same F3 screen, so I really don't know what that's about. There is also this increased search radius for a bell when starting a raid from 48 to 64 blocks. I did a whole bunch of testing and trying to figure this one out, but it just didn't seem to be so. I could only ever get them to appear in the radius of 32 blocks, so really not sure what's going on with that change. And the third thing is errors encountered while loading regions now print more diagnostics to the log file. I hope that stuff is just going to be useful and helpful for fixing more bugs in the future. So now let's jump into some of the bigger changes in this update. So we have soul sand here, but there are no mobs spawning. That's because I'm currently in 1.14.1. And here in 1.14.2 you see that mobs are now able to spawn on soul sand again. You will, however, be unable to place rails or redstone on top of the soul sand. That change has not been reverted. And if you don't recognise this environment, it is my mob spawning testing chamber from the myth busting series. This is a myth busting plug. If you've never seen the series, there'll be a link to one of the episodes in the description box down below where we tested all of the new blocks and which ones mobs could spawn on. So here we have a big change to how raids work. They will now be dependent on your render distance. I've set this to the smallest which I can, which is a render distance of 2, so you can see that not much of the world is loaded at one point. And raiding parties will have to appear inside of these loaded chunks. Now the distance used to be 64 blocks. With this new render distance, it'll be lower than that. So if I give myself the bad omen effect, a raid has now started and those mobs will appear somewhere in these chunks. And wow, they literally were spawned in right here, which is kind of like right next to where I am as well. So if you want to do some craziness with your raids, turn down the render distance and they'll literally spawn in the middle of the village. Well done, Iron Golem. You took care of that for me, didn't you? So there is a handy hotkey in this game, which is F3 and N. It swaps you between creative mode and spectator mode, as you can see. If you are now in survival Minecraft, it will switch you into creative mode. This never used to be a thing, but now it is. So you can press F3 and N, go into creative mode, and then it will cycle you between these two modes. So shulker boxes can be placed in creative mode and then they can be broken as well, but when you break them in creative mode you can see that the shulker box drops, and that's because they can have items inside of them that you might not want to lose. Well, a change has been made. If you have an empty shulker box and you break it in creative mode, you can see that the block just gets destroyed. This next change has me wondering if the devs have made a classic mistake, the sort that I make all the time and I'm sure other players do as well. It's to do with parrots spawning. They can spawn inside of grass, which is this block. Right, what they can't do is spawn on the grass block, and I believe this is an error in the code and it has been changed. They can now spawn on grass blocks. So to give you an example of what I'm talking about, if I use the set block command and we fill this in with grass, it's very easy to forget that you need to type grass_block. So that actually makes this type of grass, and I'm curious if they made the same mistake, because if you want the grass block you have to type grass_block. It's a pretty simple mistake to make. There was a really nasty bug that has been squashed involving the point of interest block of a villager. So this is its point of interest block because it has changed its profession, as you can see, and there was a very slim chance that if you broke this at just the wrong time that it would crash the game. And of course on a server that can get magnified a fair bit with lots of players playing at once. Anyway, the chance of this happening was relatively slim, but it is now not part of the game. This bug is actually 2. It's related to teleporting over long distances. I believe it affects survival Minecraft, as I haven't experienced the same problem in creative. But as we teleport over here, you can see that I clip downwards into the block for a moment, and then I'm unable to move. I'm kind of stuck, glitched into this block, and I can't jump up and down, and it's a nasty bug, and it's been taken care of. There was an interesting bug in this game that would allow you to stack non-stackable items like boats, for example. If I put them into here, you can see we can't stack them. But if we were to shift-click using the trade on the side, then it puts them into a stack. And I can try and put this in my inventory. I actually have to throw it on the ground and pick it up. You won't be able to do this, though, in this release. An exception had been added allowing you to light a campfire with a flame bow. So you can see that the campfire is now lit, and they hadn't thought about waterlogged blocks. So now you can have a waterlogged campfire, except you can't because I'm in 1.14.1. Using a grindstone to remove the enchantment from an enchanted book would end up with it saying Enchanted Book. This will now correctly rename to just book, and it won't have the slanted text as well. Here I've summoned in a wither, and you can see that it is attacking undead mobs. This is not the correct behaviour for a wither. This is something you would have seen in 1.14.1, but it's been fixed. And now for a handful of bugs I was unable to recreate. So this is an iron golem that's naturally generated in the village. If I were to attack it in survival Minecraft, it would attack me back, and apparently there's a bug stopping that from happening, so that's been fixed. Remember though, if you created the iron golem yourself, you can attack it and it won't attack back. There was another bug to do with a door I was unable to recreate, where you open and close it and you're standing inside of it, and it has a similar effect to this where it will change the player model like so. And there was also a bug with the trading llama spawning into the world and then instantly despawning. So if you haven't seen these in your world for a while, that might be why, and supposedly it's taken care of. So those are all the things I thought were worth talking about in 1.14.2. If you have enjoyed this video, then please do leave a like. As always, thanks for doing that. And of course, be sure to report any bugs that you find to the bug tracker. Let's help Mojang make 1.14.3 nice and stable, as we know they're going to be working on it. And we want to get rid of all the bugs in this update, right? Anyways, I mentioned myth busting earlier in this video. There are a couple of links to episodes of myth busting on your screen if you want to go check them out. But that is it from me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.